about anti-gravity. So now with this theory of anti-gravity, we can move forward into Close Encounters of the Foo Fighter Kind, Secret Research and Development in Anti-Gravity and Flying Saucers in the Third Reich, Germany, from 1925 to 1945. First close detailed photographs of Nazi Germany's free energy saucer dreadnoughts. It's very dangerous these days to talk about anything that the Nazis did, especially anything of interest or anything that's not bad about them, even if it is a technology. There are many factors. The guys from Bluebook, the Anti-Defamation League, would be very quick to point out that this is probably a neo-Nazi propaganda. With our 2-hour documentary film on the Satano-Lucifero illuminated roots of Nazism in Germany, I think we've made quite abundantly clear that we do not stand for, when I say we, these are the several people that work on the film, we do not stand for anything that is neo-Nazism, because this is just another coin of the global Illuminism. Every time they accuse me on a radio show of being a neo-Nazi, I simply say, what is a Nazi? I mean, what is a communist? Aren't these the same commun-Nazis? Aren't these the two sides of the same coin? What is a Nazi and what is an Illuminati? Aren't these the same other two sides of a bigger coin, the Illuminati coin?
How many people understand that distinction, though? That's the problem.
Well, I can point to literature sources. Hannah Arendt is the best source here in this country, Origins of Totalitarianism by Hannah Arendt, that basically equates Nazism with communism. Fascism is another book that our president wrote, which has dozens of pages of Nazi Party, National Socialist Party yearly meetings and the reports on these meetings. And you read them and you suddenly get these ants crawling on your back, the cold shivers on your back, because you realize that this could have been pages of a Communist Party yearly meeting. You can get 20 pages of the Nazi meeting and interchange them with the Communist meeting, and nobody of the guys that sleep in the room or do crossword puzzles or talk to their neighbor, just waiting for the time for the whole damn thing to finish, would ever realize that they were just read 30 pages from a Nazi party. I mean, even the party is labeled in one word, the party with capital P. That's it. They don't even state the whole name, I mean, the Communist Party or the Nazi Party. And something else that I would like to point here is that, I mean, I'm coming from Bulgaria, a Slavic country, and in the Nazi racial and genetic purity doctrine of the creation of the super race, the supermensch, the Slavs had genes that were expendable, so ergo all the Slavs were destined to become the fertilizer for the agricultural fields of the 1,000-year Reich. And true to their philosophies, they butchered probably about 30 million Slavs, 20 million Russians, 6 million Poles, and the rest here and there, which makes about 10 Slavs to every Jew that perished in the concentration camps in Germany. 10 times as many Slavs were killed in the Second World War without making much noise about that. I mean, the Slavs do not have as strong a voice as other communities here in this country. So it's very hard to accuse a Slav of being a neo-Nazi. It's like accusing a Jew of being a neo-Nazi. I mean, we've suffered so much by the Germans. This is a little kind of a statement of a political lineage of myself. What I'm interested in is not in the Nazi propaganda. I'm interested in the hardware that was created by the Nazis and passed on to all the superpowers, Russian, British, and Americans after the war, and has been used or abused ever since. The Nazis created all the hardware necessary for a standard run-of-the-mill little gray abduction scenario. They had the stun guns, the paralyzer phasers, they had the anti-gravity lifting tractor beams that would lift a body out of a house. They had the special radiation. When you radiate a house with the roof of the house, it makes the roof transparent so that you can lift the victim through the roof without making damage or any visible cause or scar to either the roof or the human being. This is called throughportation. It came as a byproduct of the Philadelphia experiments for the Americans. I mean, the Nazis had that developed much earlier.
How come they didn't win the war if they had all these fantastic devices?
Excellent question. This is one of the best questions. Actually, we would institute the Golden Question Mark Award. This is the Golden Skeptical Award. 3 tapes for first award, 2 tapes for second, and 1 audio tape for the third. For the best skeptical questions during this 10-hour seminar. I mean, this is how I get my most important feedback, by the way. The most harsh, attacking, skeptical questions are the ones that I love most. I'm coming from a European tradition of very hard arguing and, how should I say, basically quite heated academic disputes that remain academic. Basically, we attack each other's positions and each other's statements, but not personal attacks. So I greatly admire all these skeptical questions that come from the public. And here we have our little race. Now, let's go through the slides that we have. Where did the Germans build all this stuff? I mean, Germany was bombed flat at the end of the war. They couldn't make a truck run and work. They had no gas for the trucks. Well, that was the first question that came to my mind. I mean, where the hell would the Germans build these things? And then I remembered Bill Cooper's book about the excessive, tremendous underground construction that has been going on after the 50s in this country and all over the world, by the way, camouflaged under nuclear bomb shelters. The Luciferian presence on the planet very skillfully creates a fake threat, the nuclear threat of the other superpower, in order to force the governments to build these tremendous underground projects that are used later for other purposes. If there is a adjudication coming down to the planet from the Trinitarian management, what a better place for the Luciferian forces to hide underground in their alternative to evacuation scenario than in these shelters that were built originally against a nuclear attack. Maybe the whole nuclear hoax and the whole whole Mickey Mouse Cold War were created just to have the reason for building of these underground shelters. So, where the hell did the Germans build their saucers? Bill Cooper has been talking about underground construction here on the planet. And then I realized that on some of the photographs, this looks suspiciously like an underground factory. And I look carefully at the wall here, and sure enough, the walls look like hewn out of solid rock. This is a V2. This is a V2 assembly line in the finish stage, where the engines are attached to the fuel tanks. The rocket is still naked without the outer shell. Here, this is an assembly line for the fuel tanks. The size of the air conditioning immediately will allow an air conditioning engineer to calculate the space that is air conditioned. And we are talking about monstrous spaces. Here it is, the rock, the wall, hewn out of solid rock. Very rarely, usually the photographs will be done like this. They don't want to show that there is no end to the tunnel. They don't want to show the real size of these complexes. That's why they would they would not publish photographs where you see that basically the tunnel runs forever. Also, another suspicious thing is that these are not round tunnels done with a tunnel boring machine.
Oh, that's true.
How the hell were they built? With picks? With, what is it, rock picks? I mean,
Jackhammers.
with jackhammers. They didn't have the time from 42 on, even if they used 20 times as many slave labor or dynamite. A lady came to me after one of these meetings and said, you know, I remember reading some CIA files 20 years ago that the Germans were using sonic lasers that would, I don't know, probably pulverize the rock into sand just by directing a special sonic beam at the rock, which allowed them to zoom through these underground spaces, through the rocks. I mean, this is the most solid German rock. We are not talking about Mickey Mouse Italian dolomite here that that you can blow at it and it would disintegrate. This is rock hard Teutonic rock. It's very hard to drill. I think they were zooming through this hard rock basically with the speed they were managing to hold the sand out that was coming, or fine gravel, depend on how you fine-tune the sonic laser beam. There is assembly line for V1 in Nordhausen, and Nordhausen is a giant underground complex. There was no concentration camp without a giant industrial facility next to it, and no industrial facility without a concentration camp next to it. And no such combinations without an underground appendage in the last 3 years of the war. The Germans were even thinking of building underwater munition plants, underwater. By the time the war ended, here we see V1s on the underground assembly line. And it's quite a finished achievement because we see electricity, ventilation. This was probably a much bigger tunnel that was divided into two here by some brick construction in the middle. Another shot in a different room. Here we see that it's a very big gallery. It's probably 2 stories tall at least, because this is about 1 story, and it hardly goes to half of it. And then we see a giant air conditioning duct going here. I mean, guess the spaces that were air conditioned underground. And the lighting, you see how, I mean, this is not artificial lighting for the purpose of the photographs. Everything was installed and running. The conveyor belts, the rockets and so on. They produced 6,000 rockets that were fired at London. I'll talk about the propaganda later. Let's finish with the underground empire that the Germans built. This is a line of Henschel turbojet bombers on the assembly line, and we see here we have an even bigger room. It's 1 length, 2 lengths, 3 lengths, and something bigger than the fighter plane. We're talking about probably 60 feet of a giant tunnel underground that goes on forever. It's very hard to come to these photographs. Each one of them came from a separate book, a lot of them from English books that is impossible to find in this country. I have accumulated the biggest collection of German underground and bizarre weaponry photographs from dozens of books. People still keep bringing me additional books. All the present-day machinery, so the slide is not very good, it's quite dark. The present-day machinery builds tunnels that are round in shape. The German square tunneling technique indicates that they used a lot more advanced technology. Another boring machinery. We'll come again to this underground construction through the Rand Corporation Symposium in the early 50s about the giant underground alternative to evacuation empire that was about to start to be built. But and we see the size of these machines. I mean, rarely are they used for public transportation tunnels. Most of these are used for secret Illuminati underground works that we know nothing about. This is a 1, 2.5. This is a 5-story building diameter tunnel.
What company is that that's on the logo on the side?
This is an MIT photograph. This is an MIT built machine that automatically lays the concrete as it goes along the tunnel. You don't even have to do shoring and
I think it's Robbins. The slide was backwards.
yeah, sorry. And finally, I found a photograph in a rare book on German munition construction. This is the Mittelwerk Nordwerk, or the Nordhausen underground complex, just 800 meters to the Dora concentration camps. The underground facilities were right under the concentration camps so that they wouldn't be bombed or very close to them. And if we read carefully, we see a length of 1800 meters, which is about 1.3 miles. The width was, this is only 800 meters. It's probably a square, 1.3 miles by 1.3 miles. And this is what they excavated in the beginning. This is 360 feet space between two galleries. Even if you explode dynamite in one, it wouldn't reach the other one. These are the big assembly lines that are 2 kilometers long. And then the subcomponent assembly lines were in the smaller galleries. And we are talking about such galleries going on forever. This is the thing that they were able to finish at the end of the war, or an initial stage of the construction, because later on they were about to do this whole area. Even now, these days in Germany, somebody told me a story that they were doing road works in the 70s, and they found a manhole, and somebody went down there and started laughing like crazy. Then they lowered some lights, and everybody else went down there. And what did they discover? A whole giant assembly room of Tiger tanks, never fired, brand new, shiny and polished. The guys didn't have the fuel to use them, so they just let them down there. The war ended. They probably dynamited the entrances, whatever, and discovered them by chance. What did they do? They poured concrete over the manhole, and the story was forgotten. Hollywood would pay a fortune for these tanks because they run and they can use them in so many movies. But they had underground tank factories, underground airplane factories, where a giant elevator would lift the airplane to the surface of an underground airfield, or they were calling them U-fields. The airplane would take off, retract the wheels, and then the gate would open, the airplane flies out, and the gate closes. And I finally found the photograph, the first photograph of such a U-field built in Germany. Why were we never told about these things? Very simply because they don't want to start us thinking along these lines, because the left Luciferian hand in Germany does the very same thing that the right Illuminati hand does in Russia or in the United States. They are busily building these underground castles and strongholds. They had underground munition factories, rocket factories. They had underground petrochemical refining plants, and even underground synthetic fuel plants. 300 underground projects were built, according to Renato Vesco in his book Intercept But Don't Shoot, a brilliant book on the German secret source of development. We'll come to that later on. 300 underground projects, some of them were of this size. How many of them were? Why didn't they talk about them? Very simple, because they've been very busily using them after the war, Americans in conjunction with the federal Germans, for their never-ending secret Illuminati projects. This is how I answered my question. Where the hell did the Germans build the saucers when Germany was bomb flat at the end of the war? They had plenty of space to build the saucers. Such an innocent-looking tunnel actually covers a giant gallery behind it. This is where the ready construction, the ready products would come out of it. Number two, Question number 2, after the question number 1, where the hell did the Germans build these devices? Number 2 was, well,